Welcome to the Northeast Kingdom Voice. I'm your host, Scott Wheeler. Today's guest is the new director of the Old Stone House Museum, Molly Veysey. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, it's great to have you on because the Old Stone House has a long, proud history of coming on this show, whether it was the former director who has now since retired, Peggy Day Gibson, or some of the other workers. Throughout the years, you've had a good presence on here.
That's really great to hear. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Right. So you probably already been told you're filling some very big shoes.
I have been told that. I'm actually both intimidated by that fact, but also pretty excited about that because Peggy Day Gibson, the former director, really created a position as director over there that's dynamic and interesting and engaging. And her shoes are very big, but at least I have something to grow into.
Right. Well, you know, on the positive side, even when Peggy came on here to say goodbye to everybody, she thought this was an ideal time for somebody with new ideas to come in because there was, you know, the school had been moved up the road,
Yeah.
you know, with a little bit of showmanship with the ox and everything, and she just thought this was a good time, and now you're going to be able to focus on like program and new ideas.
Exactly. So the neighborhood was built up by Peggy and her tenure and her staff,
Right.
And beautifully so, accurately, and just it's a gorgeous spot, as you know. And now I get the very interesting and cool job to fill those buildings with fantastic programs and themes and ideas, like you said. Yeah.
Yeah, because I know we talked before the show, is as one generation passes, another generation steps into their place, and sometimes, you know, one generation isn't quite as interested in what interested the previous generation, so you've got to kind of remain relevant.
Exactly. You know, that is something that I've been very conscious about through this transition. My skill set may be somewhat different from what Peggy's skill set was, maybe in a lot of ways, from what I can see, very similar. But, you know, our skill sets or our histories may have been a little bit different, and our focuses, therefore, as director may be somewhat different. But to integrate what she has built with the foundation of what she has built and not ever ignore or try to shrug off anything that she has done during her tenure is really important to me. Right. I'm not going to try to you know, ignore or forget those things that she has built very professionally, and I'm planning very much to move forward to build on that foundation instead of forgetting it, you know.
You know, I think I'm a pretty good judge of character. I've only known you for about 20 minutes, and I can already tell you're going to do good things.
Oh, thank you.
I can just feel it. I think you really are going into this.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think you're going into it. I don't think you're going into it with a sense of dread, but I think but then I don't think you're delusional. I think you have a firm grasp on what possibly needs to be done.
Yeah, definitely. I think that there's one of the reasons that I was so excited about taking this job was anybody who's been up in that neighborhood knows and sees immediately the endless possibilities that exist up there, for programming, for classes, for education, for you know,
well, you even have weddings. You even have
weddings.
Up there
it's
sometimes.
Great. I mean, we would love to host birthday parties and anniversaries, and you know, those kind of subsidiary events are going to be really fun to expand on. But the education piece is going to be fun too. I hope to really expand the idea of professional development classes for post-collegiate credits for educators and professionals in our area, and blow that up and really make it a possibility for teachers in our whole districts, surrounding districts, to go right down the road and take credits for their recertification. What an amazing service that would be. Yeah.
And you know what's very interesting? It worked out so great that here you are, you focused on history, but then the Amish community moves in around you.
Yeah.
And although they're not directly, I know you have a great working relationship with the Amish community, but it just adds.
It's amazing.
It adds to it, just the horse and buggies and.
It is amazing. I sit in my office,
Yeah.
and 2 to 3 times a day, I hear the click-clack of hooves and a carriage go by. It's the picture of the 19th century right there in that village, and including the transportation that would have been.
Right.
Yeah.
I have often asked Peggy or anybody else who's been on the show from the old stone house, the one thing I wished is, I wish there was time travel, not just for the old stone house, but for anything. Because, how much of, like the story of the old stone house, how accurate is it? Because nobody, you have to kind of
Piece
things
together.
together.
Yeah.
And there's a bit of conjecture in it. I really wished I could go back in time.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
just to see how accurate we are on many things. Because, like, even in my 52 years of life, every once in a while, like when they talk about the history of Newport, it's like, no, I don't think so. So I imagine, if Alexander Twilight came back, I'd like to know what he'd think walking around there.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because during this most recent cold snap, as we all witnessed, it was pretty treacherous. All I could think about working over at the Old Stone House Museum, looking over at the museum, which was the dormitory,
Right.
is what the quality of life was living in that dormitory in 20 below zero weather. How did they survive? I would love to just maybe not spend a night in that era, but to go back and see actually what their methods were to keep warm and to literally survive during times like that.
I have to believe, especially in the bigger buildings around here, because I have a big old farmhouse that I've totally renovated. New windows, siding, insulation, but still, it's a challenge to heat a big house today.
Yeah.
And so I drive around and I even see big houses, nothing to say about that big stone building. I just wonder, and I think part of it is maybe they just, maybe their idea of warmth and our idea of warmth may have been a little different.
Yeah, I think so. If you've been in the museum, you would see there were almost tiny little hearths in each room. And you would assume that was for some kind of warming effect, but it was actually for coal or ash or charcoal to be brought up and warm food, or put in the in those tin containers to put in the foot of your bed, those kind of things.
That seems like a mighty fine way of carbon monoxide yourself to death, though.
It really
is. It is interesting how the changes occur about buildings. Like, off the topic a little bit, there's still people alive today, and particularly in their 90s, who have told me that on the farm, or if they just had a house and they were raising their pigs or a cow, is they would butcher the cow or the pig on the first really cold day and freeze it up, and then bring it upstairs into a bedroom, a unused bedroom, hang it from the ceiling, and they would open the window and they would have a walk-in freezer.
Oh, that's a neat idea.
All winter long.
Yeah.
And by warm season, their meat was gone.
Wow.
And so just how we look at things are
definitely.
a little different.
Yeah. Yes, definitely.
So what are your so you're not there all alone. You have a team.
I do have a team, and it's a wonderful team. I've been getting to know everyone slowly over the last month since I started, month and a half. And they're fantastic. So Walter Parento was brought on through the same hiring process as I was. And he was brought on as the development manager. And that's coming in a lot of different forms. It's manifesting itself in many different ways so far. He's taking primarily charge of the finances. And then he's also going to have a lot to do with our fundraising efforts. And he's going to also coordinate volunteers. And that would include AmeriCorps, interns, those kind of folks as well.
Right. Is Bob Hunt still kicking around?
Bob Hunt he was formerly the education coordinator. Right. I've taken that job on as the director, right. And he's moved into exclusively collections manager.
Right. Okay, that's the archives.
And no, so the archives is actually Leslie Rowell, okay. And she is.
That's right. I deal with Leslie. That's right.
Yep, she's a meticulous, careful person, and she does an amazing job maintaining our archive, our vault, which is really a neat place to go into, actually. She does a beautiful job maintaining that. And she also helps with accessions and so forth.
And I will give Leslie a shout out too, and Bob, but particularly Leslie right now, because whenever I need a photo for my journal,
yes,
she's able to find it or able to help me. And then Bob has been a great resource. And that's the one thing at the last few years, for many years, I've had such a great mutual working relationship with you folks, mm-hmm. Because nobody's in competition. We right. My history and your history, it's a little bit different. I deal with live-in history where I sit down and talk to people. Mm-hmm. Yours is, you're a great wealth of the overall history of Orleans County.
Right. Both Bob and Leslie are fantastic at piecing together stories right. through their collections together, and they're very, very capable at it. Right. The other employee we have is Dana Drake. Right. She's the administrative assistant, and she does anything from mailings to publicity to helping coordinate events. She's very much a multitasker.
Right.
Yeah.
That's great because you have a long history of having a great team up there.
It's very lucky to step into a team that's so committed and capable. I feel like I've lucked out.
Right. In a nutshell, who are you besides the director?
Great question. Who am I? The age-old question. No, but I grew up in Lamoille County. And graduated from Lamoille Union. Went to St. Michael's College for ELA. Or for English language arts, but English literature at St. Mike's, and then went to Johnson State for my master's degree in secondary education. And none of this really defines who I am, but it kind of gives you a good picture of my background. Left Johnson State to become a teacher in a middle school in Morrisville, and then subsequently got married and had 3 little girls. Took time off with my children for the last 8 years, but in the most recent 3 of those 8 years started working with the Leech Public Library in Iresburg. I had recognized when my daughter went to kindergarten that there was no supplemental enrichment programming that I had hoped would be available to her. And it bothered me to the extent that I took action. And I started an enrichment program very slowly 3 years ago for just kindergartners. And then the next year it was for 1 through 4th graders, and then this year now it's for K through 8th grade. So it's grown substantially over the last 3 years now to include the whole Iresburg Village School. And this is all happening through the Leech Public Library. And we offer classes from hip-hop fusion to junior farmer to meet the dinosaurs, collaborate with a lot of nonprofits in the area, Siskin, Fairbanks Museum, Green Mountain Farm to School. All of them have taught courses for us. And it's just been a really exciting, it's almost like a grassroots effort. I have a team of parents behind me that have been extremely supportive, but I couldn't have done any of that without the Leech Library trustees and director.
And just think, your 2 offices then are some of the most picturesque areas of the kingdom. You got the Iresburg Common.
Yeah.
And then you got the old stone house. Now, are you staying at the your other job?
So actually, this what's kind of filtering out as it's seeming to work for me. The old stone house job is a little bit slower in the winter, or it will be. Right now, I'm hitting the ground running because I'm having to learn so much. But in the future, theoretically, the old stone house job will be a little bit slower because it's not our open season. And that's really from October to the end of April is when the Leech Public Library enrichment programs happen. So, in theory, I should be able to do both seamlessly. It's definitely been a challenge this year because there's been so much learning that I've had to do with the directorship. but still possible, and both very satisfying, interesting jobs, and actually very integratable with each other. For instance, this summer I'm going to be doing, instead of doing 2 enrichment weeks for just in Irisburg, I will integrate them together. So the Time Travelers Camp will be happening at the Old Stone House Museum, and will be in collaboration with the Leach Public Library, and we'll mix up together.
Now, I have to assume that you probably didn't take the job at the Old Stone House for power, prestige, and money.
Right.
Because you have to work in history, which I also do, but in the writing aspect, you have to really love doing what you do.
It is true. So the reason I bring up the Leach Library is because it was very formative to me in my career path, and I realized I love nonprofit coordinating, directing work. I love networking. I love working with other nonprofits in the area. I love that outreach, the community service piece. It's really become very foremost in my career choices. And I think that's why I was immediately attracted to the Old Stone House position, because it shared a lot of those same qualities, and on a bigger scale, on a more county scale, which was very exciting. So that's originally why, when I saw that advertisement, I said, this is exactly right, so I went for it.
And I will say, when I asked you if you wanted to come on the show, it wasn't like, well, it was like, yeah, when?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And because that is the secret of, doing something, is you got to get out there. Even though I will say, as I said, the last decade or so, the Old Stone House, they have done anytime I've asked them to come on the show, or it's a two-sided, it's a two-sided street. If you have something that you really want to promote, you also contact me.
Yeah, great.
And that's how it works.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Thanks for the invitation. I'll take you up on that.
So what's your first event coming up? And
yes,
that you're going to be involved
My
with?
first event is the Collectors Fair, coming up in February 18th. And this year, especially this spring, I'm going to just be trying to get used to the ebb and flow of programming, the programming that's already the standard at the Old Stone House. And so, you'll see slight changes. I'm going to try to reinvigorate some of the programs that, have seen maybe a little bit lower attendance over the last few years, trying to combine some programs with incentives, to really get people coming and reinvigorated about the Old Stone House Museum. So the Collectors Fair is my first big event, and then we open in May 15th. So I'll hit the ground running after that, and some really exciting new projects at hand, but also going to be very much trying to learn how everything moves through the season.
Right.
Yeah.
And I know you're young enough to probably be you're probably internet savvy.
Yeah, for the most part, yeah.
And because I'm going to tell you, social media, about getting the word out about what you're doing, if you play it right, it's actually a very, I have myself in business, I have found that it has been a huge part of business, huge part of promotion, and I think that's one area that you could probably work on a bit. Like, the Collectors Fair, for some reason, it's such a great event, but I don't know if I keep missing it. I've been to it a couple times, but the problem now lies, as you know, in promoting events. If you're 40 and younger, you don't pick up newspapers.
Right. And
so newspaper ads are good for one group, but then you got to do social media.
Yeah. It's really become, we were just talking about this at a staff meeting in January, at the beginning of January, that our efforts almost have to canvas all of the different types of media that are possible. Social media, paper media. We really have to try to get the word out in as many different avenues as possible, because then you're going to hit the gamut of age groups, yeah, I agree. Yeah,
and that's it. The Collectors Fair, because I think I've been there I've been there at least 2 or 3 times over the years, and but then I think of the faces who are no longer there,
Right.
because some of your extraordinary collectors, such as Chet Carpenter. I don't know if you ever had the honor.
Peggy has told me stories.
He was like,
yeah.
He was one of the most esteemed, nice, brilliant human beings on Orleans County history. His family was basically founded were some of the early pioneers of Derby. He had this postcard collection, and even though I suspect his daughter Kathy will still be involved. But no, you have lost to death a fair number of the original collectors.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that is true for all of our programs. And that's why, for me, it'll be really important to try to stimulate activity in the younger generations. I find my generation actually to be incredibly difficult to reach. I have trouble with the enrichment programming, and they have kids who are getting flyers home in their home to school folders. It seems like a really surefire way of getting people's attention, but for some reason it must just be that we're busy, that we're working generation, that we have young children, whatever it may be. I find our generation to be difficult, so that will be a challenge. And then it does seem like we are able very much to engage young children through our camps and youth programs, and older people.
Right.
And who are inherently very interested in history and the history that they remember. So there has to be, we have to figure out a way to engage the generation surrounding my own.
Right. And the thing is about history, like we spoke beforehand, I think sometimes if you can make a bit of history relevant to the people, especially students, because let's be real, young students, even through college, that age typically
Tricky.
History is a hard sell.
It is.
I have family members, I have friends who, because I do history for a living, they could care less, which I understand. We have a hard enough time living today without worrying about yesterday.
Right.
But the thing is, sometimes when I'm able to, for example, we spoke beforehand, you're into big into the Boston Bruins. Oh yeah, I love the Bruins. Oh, did you know the founder of the Boston Bruins, Charles Adams, was from Newport Center?
Right.
He's the man who built the Boston Bruins, brought the NHL to this country, and there's a spark. Will it totally ignite things? Probably not, but it just might. Sometimes it just,
It's linking story.
Linking stories, because there's so many world event stories that, they're based here or they're involved here.
Right, or they originate from here. Yeah, definitely. So one of the things that I've recognized about both museum and library work is that I think both entities are in an era where people are very easily forgetting the past. And I think that goes very much to a library as well. People are very quick to forget that there are physical books that in the past have really relied upon for entertainment and education and so forth. And now we're getting all of that we're being fed that stuff instead from external sources, media and TV and internet and all these places. And it's my opinion for both libraries and museums, and now I'm focusing so much on the museum end of that. I really feel like we need to diversify what we provide for people, so that those, with keeping the essence of the mission pure, obviously,
right,
but to diversify, to make it relevant to a large group of a large array of ages, but also socioeconomic classes. Try to really diversify our scope and sequences.
Right. Yeah, I think it's a great idea, because even in my work, as one generation passes, like the Depression and World War II generation, I still work to record those memories, because that's important. But I hate to say it, there gets to be less interest, because I still feel obligated to record those stories, but there really is less interest amongst my readers because there's fewer people who actually remember it.
Right.
And a lot of times people in my world, they want to see history that they just barely maybe remember, or their parents were in. It's like, for example, in my early days, I probably wouldn't have done the 60s communes or Vietnam. And now I will do stories like that. You have to kind of move forward. You don't forget that.
Right.
But you do have to make some things, you have to make things relevant.
Yeah. Actually, it was Peggy who suggested to us recently in a staff meeting that we start to think about focusing on some programs that might really play to the 1950s era, which is, what folks in their retirement age now are remembering and is relevant. And we have some really amazing collections right now that are very much focused on old cars of the past, and to pair an exhibit of photos from old cars in the past and an antique car show, something like that. Get those folks engaged as well, and that really goes for all of us. How can I engage my own generation and what we remember? Do we remember the 80s, and I mean, what did the old Stonehouse Museum look like in the 80s? What was going on in the Northeast Kingdom in the 80s? How can we honor those eras, not just the 19th century, but all of the eras of our own past?
Are you at the age yet where you turn on the radio and you go to the oldies channel, then you say, oh my God, they're playing my music.
They're playing the Backstreet Boys?
Yeah. And
I don't think quite yet, but I'm getting there.
Or you wait till you go to a parade and you're sitting there watching a parade and you're thinking, why are these new cars in the parade?
Right.
But then you realize, oh, wait, those cars 1970s. And then you say, wait a minute.
Wait, it wasn't that long ago, I hope.
Yeah, but you're right. In that really, it's like every once in a while I'll see how much lunch boxes, these tin lunch boxes I had as a kid. If I had only been smart enough to say, oh wait, I'm not going to put food in it. I'm going to store this.
Yes.
And in 40 years, I'm going to make big bucks on it.
Right.
You
don't think of it that way.
That's how come they're also for the baby boomers, they're actually bringing some of these toys back into service because, you get nostalgic for the old days.
Right, exactly. So it's kind of neat at the museum right now. Walter Parento, who I spoke about, Dana Drake, who I also mentioned, and myself, we're all 36. We're all born in 81. So it's a pretty neat infusion of our age group that have somehow convened in this place in this time. And I'm hoping that between the three of us, we can really network and get the word out to people of our generation and generations directly above and below, and really start to get them involved in the museum as well to ensure longevity.
Then you have that delicate dance of bringing it forward, without taking away.
Right.
And it's
a balancing act. Yeah.
It is. It's that balancing act, but. I'm not one of the, because you will run into people. I run into it in my business. I've seen many businesses run into it, that there are people who say, no, we don't want change. This is what it's supposed to be.
Right.
But the thing is, as a business, sometimes you've got to make some tough decisions too, because if you're losing attendance,
right,
you've got to do some things.
That's why I really think keeping the reverence for the essential mission of the museum and making sure that we're always tying that into every program, to every project, to every piece of progress. It's going to be really important for us to make sure we're always looking back at that mission, that fundamental, and saying, okay, we can move forward, but it has to be able to tie back in some way.
But the fundamental mission of the whole entire place was a school of further education.
Right.
Thus, you can fit things
in
pretty well because stagnation is, education is not about stagnation.
It's about moving ahead. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree. That's why I think professional development courses make a whole lot of sense there. I mean, it was, Samuel Reed Hall was the first, teacher's teacher. He basically taught teachers how to teach, He was a teacher education instructor. So it makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, I just had an article in the journal about him.
Yeah, really fascinating guy, and I think that those kind of things, they play back to the mission very resoundingly. There's no complication there. So
because I don't believe that Alexander Twilight would really want everything to stay stagnant, because he was an educator.
And he was progressive.
Right.
Oh, he had some really progressive thinking. I mean, he not only included men in his school, but women, almost an equal amount at one point of men and women. He was an African American himself.
Right.
He was, even despite the school board saying that he couldn't build the dormitory, he went ahead and did it because he knew it was creating infrastructure that would build on their future there. So I totally agree. I think he was a progressive thinker.
Okay, well, we have run out of time. But I know you'll be back on.
I would love to be back, yes.
And, but what are your final words to the viewers?
I hope everybody can come and visit us, either during the closed season, we're all at the office a lot of the time, or during the open season. We'd love to see everyone come and check out the changes and the beautiful spot. If you haven't been there yet, it's pastoral, it's idyllic, it is the manifestation of the Northeast Kingdom.
But I will tell you this, I have lived here all my life. I only live a short distance as the crow flies from the old stone house. I have a hard time actually telling people how to get there. What's the best way to get there?
Okay, so I would go the Orleans way. If you go into Orleans Center and there's signage, you take a left right past the stump dump. Everybody knows the stump dump, or right past the church. You take a left and you basically follow that road all the way up to the museum. You can't miss it if you follow that road. There are some other back road kind of ways to get there from Evansville and so forth, but that is the most direct route.
Okay, well, thank you for coming on. I think the Old Stone House is entering an exciting
Very
new
exciting.
chapter.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'd love to be back anytime.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And thank you to the viewers for tuning in to another segment of the Northeast Kingdom Voice.